Why is it snowing?
Kobe and Michael, if it's not done, that's homework.
We're supposed to get it right here.
Okay. Go fast.
Where's King Asa?
Look on the. She's not.
Wait, is he in this period?
Yes.
I mean,
I don't want to leave it here.
it's not bad.
Hey Kyle, she's recording. Right there.
Oh no, I'm being recorded. You're the camera frame.
Hey, you're blocking the view.
That like goes bad to the photo bomb.
Really? What?
If Kobe and Michael is done, just leave it. Otherwise,
Put him
we're
in.
minute.
Hey,
Hey, hurry up, sit down. Grab your Kobe and Michael now. Hurry. Guys, hurry up so I can take attendance. We have a short class today. Hurry up.
It's Kyle. It's Kyle.
Okay, listen up, please.
Hello. So we want to navigate to our seats so we can get started. If you don't know me, I am Miss Young. I am currently a student teacher, and I will be teaching your lesson today. Some of you may have noticed that there is a camera in the background. That's because I need to record my lesson. The only people who are going to see it are two of my teachers, so you don't need to worry about that. All right?
Okay, go sit down. You can find it later. You're taking way too long. Go sit down.
All right.
Jonathan, sit down.
Pretty soon with Mrs. Grimson, you are going to read a story called The Watsons Go to Birmingham. And as part of reading that story, you're going to need to summarize certain chapters, all right? Today we're going to learn how to write a summary to prepare you for that, all right? Now, Miss LeClaire has passed out some handouts for you.
Did everyone get this one?
No, I didn't.
And you'll see at the top that there are two I can statements. These are things you're going to be able to do by the end of the lesson. So first, I can identify the most important elements of the story, and I can write a summary of a short story. All right? As we go through the lesson, you'll see that there are blanks. I want you to fill those in, all right? Those are going to be important vocabulary. Okay? So let's get started. All right. So I think the most obvious question to begin with is, what is a summary? Who has heard of a summary before? All right. So most of you. Who can tell me why a summary might be useful?
If someone wants to know about a book, they can kind of get a decent idea of what the book may be about.
Right. It's a good way to get a handle on a book in a quick way, right? Yeah. How else think?
Another way a summary might be useful because if you're doing like a project and you just made a summary and like saying, oh, what did this thing do? And you can check the summary to see what it is.
Right, it's a good way to refresh on information quickly. All right, these are good answers. Now, a summary is kind of similar to something else called a retelling, all right? But it is different in important ways, all right? So when you do a retelling, you include every single detail in a story, all right? But when you do a summary, you include only the most important details to get to the heart of the story. The way I like to think about it is like a sponge, all right? So you take a sponge, you dunk it into a bucket of water, and you pull it out. All of that water that's filling up the sponge and dripping down your hand is like the information in a retelling. It's as much as can possibly fit, right? But imagine then you squeeze out that sponge, you squeeze out all of that water. It's still going to be a little bit wet, right? But it's not going to have as much. That's like a summary. It has only what has to be there, only what sticks, right? Okay. All right.
Last time I closed it out.
So, since we're looking for the most important details of the story for our summary, let's figure out what those important details are. All right? So first, you want to talk about the main characters. All right? You want to answer questions like, who is the story about? What are these characters like, and what do they want? You also want to establish the setting. Answer the question, where does the story take place? Now, if you see on the handout, you also have these questions written there. So as you're writing the summary later, you'll be able to look back and think about those questions. Right? You also want to include certain parts of the plot structure. Now, Mrs. Brixenhouse told me that you briefly talked about this in the past, right? Who can tell me what a conflict is? Yeah?
The conflict is kind of the main thing, the main challenge that the person in the story may be facing.
Exactly. It's the main challenge that the main character faces, right? So you want to answer the question, what is the main challenge the characters are facing? This is going to be established near the beginning of the story, near the exposition, right? Who can tell me what a climax is? We haven't heard much from this side of the room yet.
Oh my gosh, we worked on this forever. Somebody answer the question.
All right.
Can you ask it again?
Who can tell me what a climax is? Leland? You know?
It's like the main, like the highlight of the story, like the very top.
Close. It is what we call the turning point of the story. You see this peak up here? It's the point in the story that has the most interest. It's where all of the information that comes before comes together and the main character finally faces that conflict. All right? Now who can tell me what a resolution is? You guys are great. Oh, Lydia.
It's basically like the solution to the conflict. Basically, they're like everything settles down.
Yeah, after the climax, it is what happens to the character as a result of the climax. You want to answer the question, how does life change for the character as a result of the climax, right? So that's just part of that falling action, right? So you want to talk about the climax, the conflict, the climax, and the resolution. And finally, we want to talk about the theme of the story. Who can tell me what a theme is? Yeah?
The message.
Right, it's the message. It's the big idea of the story, the lesson of the story. It's what the characters learn, it's what the readers learn. So you want to answer the question, what is the big idea that the story explores? Okay. So we're going to look at an example of a summary of a story I'm sure you have all at least heard before, Little Red Riding Hood. All right? Does anyone want to read it? Yeah. Can you
Little
see it?
Red Riding.
Can you see it well?
Yeah.
Okay.
Little Red Riding Hood is a little girl who always wears a red hood. While walking through the forest to visit her grandmother, she meets a wolf. Even though she was instructed to stay on the path, he tricks her into getting distracted. By the time she reaches her grandmother's house, the wolf has eaten her, and then he eats Little Red Riding Hood. They are saved when a passing woodcutter kills the wolf and lets them free, showing that children should listen to instructions to avoid danger.
All right, thank you. Now, you might have noticed that this summary doesn't include all of the details that you usually hear in the Little Red Riding Hood story. It doesn't talk about her mother was the one who sent her on the journey to the woods. It doesn't talk about her basket of goodies or the flowers on the path. Those would be details that you would include in a retelling, but this is a more succinct, abbreviated version of that story. All right, so I've highlighted the different sections of the story, and I want you to connect them to the important elements that we talked about earlier, all right? So who can tell me what the red section is doing? Little Red Riding Hood is a little girl who always wears a red hood. While walking through the forest to visit her grandmother, she meets a wolf. Yeah.
Main characters.
Right, it's the main character. It's telling you who the main character is. Little Red Riding Hood, the wolf. It's telling you about her. She's a little girl and what she wants to do. She wants to visit her grandmother. What about yellow? Yeah. Right, it is the main setting of the story, the forest. All right, what about the green? Even though she was instructed to stay on the path, he, the wolf, tricks her into getting distracted. Yeah. Right, that is the main conflict of the story. Is she going to stay on the path, or is she going to follow the instructions? Is she going to follow the instructions and stay on the path, or is she going to get distracted? And blue. By the time she reaches her grandmother's house, the wolf has eaten her, and then he eats Little Red Riding Hood.
The climate?
Right, that's the climax. It's where all the details of the story come together, and she faces the result of the conflict. Because she strayed from the path, she gets eaten by a wolf. So in the purple, they are saved when a passing woodcutter kills the wolf and lets them free. Who can tell me what that role is? Yeah? Right, that's the resolution. It's what happens as a result of the climax. The woodcutter only needs to cut them out of the wolf because of the climax of her being eaten. And finally, showing that children should listen to instructions to avoid danger. Yeah?
The theme.
Right, that is the theme. That is the main lesson of the story. All right? So now, we're going to write our own summaries. All right, so I picked out a story for today. It is called Suki's Kimono. Who has heard of a kimono before? All right, who would be willing to describe a kimono? Yeah?
From what I've heard, I think like a kimono, it's like this like clothing article thing that you wear as like a tradition or something.
Right, it is a traditional type of clothing. Do anybody know where it comes from in the world? Yeah?
Japan.
Right, it comes from Japan. So where do you think this character, Suki, it probably comes from? Right. So she probably comes from Japan, and she's wearing this traditional style of clothing. All right. Oh, sorry. Miss Claire, would you pass out? Thank you. All right, Miss LeClaire is going to be passing out a worksheet for you. On this worksheet, on the front side, it is going to have a space for you to write a summary of the story and then make an illustration from it. This is something that you're going to need to do when Mrs. Brinson teaches you walks and scopes for anything, right? This is practice for that. On the back side of the worksheet, you're going to see a chart with the different elements that we talked about today, all right? As you are listening to the story, take note of those elements so that it will be easy for you to write about them later, okay? All right. And does everybody have a worksheet now? All right, Elizabeth.
Sugi's Kimono by Chieri Uegaki. On the first day of school,
Hang on, you said take notes while they go, right?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
double check.
Take notes in the
Sugi
chart
wanted to wear her
of the
kimono.
different elements.
Her sisters did not approve. "You can't wear that," said Mary. "People will think you're weird." "You can't wear that," said Yumi. "Everyone will laugh and no one will play with you. You need something new, Suki. You need something cool." But Suki shook her head. She didn't care for new. She didn't care for cool. She wanted to wear her favorite thing, and her favorite thing was her kimono. Suki's Obashan had given her the kimono. The first time Suki wore it, her Obashan took her to a street festival where they slurped bowls of slippery cold somen noodles and shared a cone of crunchy shaved ice topped with a sweet red bean sauce. Under strings of paper lanterns, Suki joined her Obashan in a circle dance. She followed her and copied her movements, trying to be as light and as graceful. She watched the other women and children who danced, especially those who were dressed in cotton kimonos like her. Later, Suki sat so close to the stage that when the taiko drummers performed, boom, 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 she felt like she'd swallowed a ball of thunder and her whole insides quaked and quivered. Before they left the festival, Suki and her Obashan stopped at a souvenir stand. There were many things to choose from, but her Obashan found the prettiest thing of all: a handkerchief of pale pink linen decorated with tiny maple leaves and cherry blossoms. When she gave it to Suki, she said, "This will help you remember our day." Now it was time for school. Mother checked Suki's obi one last time and took a picture of Mary, Yumi, and Suki together by the front steps. Then, as she watched, the three sisters made their way down the block to their school. Mary and Yumi stayed several paces ahead of Suki and pretended they didn't know her. But Suki didn't mind. She turned and waved to her mother before she clip-clopped along in her shiny red getup, feeling very pleased in her fan-patterned blue kimono. Once in a while, Suki would lift her arms and let the butterfly sleeves flutter in the breeze. It made her feel like she'd grown her own set of wings. When they reached the school, Mary and Yumi hurried across the yard to a group of their friends. Suki stopped and looked around. Some of the children turned and stared at her, and others giggled and pointed at her kimono. But Suki ignored them. She took a seat on a swing to wait for the bell. A girl dressed in overalls just like a pair Suki had at home sat on the swing beside her. "Hi, Suki," said the girl. "Hi, Penny," said Suki. "How come you're dressed so funny?" Penny asked. "Where'd you get those shoes?" Suki lifted her feet off the sand and wiggled her toes. "I'm not dressed funny," she said. "My grandma gave me these shoes." Suki started pumping her legs. After a moment, Penny did the same, and soon they were both swinging as fast and as high as they could. Swoosh, swoosh, up and up. When the bell rang, Suki and Penny jumped off their swings and ran to the gym for the first day assembly. Once they were finally taken to their new classroom, Suki chose a desk near the window. Penny chose a desk next to Suki. As they waited for everyone to find a seat, two boys in front of Suki turned and snickered behind their hands. One of the boys reached over and snatched at Suki's sleeve. "Look at this," he said. "She's a bat." Suki felt her cheeks burn, but she did not respond. Instead, she concentrated on sitting up straight and tall the way her Obashan always did. It was easy to do with an obi wrapped around her middle. Her obi was golden yellow, and in its folds Suki had tucked away her pale pink handkerchief. "Welcome to the first grade," said the teacher. "My name is Mrs. Paggio," she smiled. "Let's introduce ourselves and tell everyone what we did this summer." When it was her turn to speak, Suki stood up and told the teacher her name. "Hello, Suki," said Mrs. Paggio. "What did you do this summer?" "My grandma visited us," she said. straightening her sleeves. She brought me my kimono and my geita. Suki raised her foot to show the teacher her wooden clog. Somewhere in the classroom, someone laughed. But Suki took a deep breath and continued. The best thing was that she took me to a festival, and there were dancing girls dressed like me, and they danced like this. She took a few steps and swayed her arms sideways. Look, now she's dancing, someone said, but Suki didn't hear. She hummed the music she remembered hearing at the festival. She remembered how it felt to dance barefoot in the open air on fresh-cut grass that tickled her toes. She tried to picture the other dancers, how they moved forward into the circle with the rhythm of the music, how they stamped their feet first right, then left, swung their arms first up, then down, how they stepped back and back and back, then clapped. When Suki couldn't remember the next step, she made it up, just to keep dancing. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, stop. When she finished, the room seemed very quiet. Everyone was watching her. Suki sat down, wondering if she was in trouble. But Mrs. Paggio said, "That was wonderful, Suki." And she started to clap. Then so did Penny. And after a moment, so did the entire class. After school, as the three sisters walked home together, Mary and Yumi grumbled about their first day. "No one even noticed my new sweater," said Mary. "No one even noticed my cool shoes," said Yumi. But Suki just smiled. As she clip-clopped along behind them, Suki pulled out the pale pink handkerchief from her obi and held it up over her head to catch the wind. And in her blue cotton kimono and in her shiny red geita, Suki danced all the way home.
All right. So, let's think about the important parts of the summary we talked about. Who are some of the main characters from Suki's kimono? Yeah, Kristen? Suki?
Yeah.
Right. Suki is a really important main character. Can anyone think of another main character?
I don't know how to say the lady that took Suki to the festival.
Right. The word you're thinking of is oba-chan. That is the Japanese word for grandmother. So if you want to mention her in the summary, you can refer to her as either. Alright. So either grandmother or oba-chan. Are there any other main characters?
The teacher.
Right, Mrs. Paggio, her teacher. Alright. Who knows what the main setting of the story is? Lydia?
Her school.
Right, the school is the main setting for the story. If you missed anything while originally listening, this is a good opportunity to fill in those notes on the chart in the back. Alright? Okay. Who knows what the conflict is of the story?
People made fun of Suki's kimono at school.
Right. Well, really close. The conflict is that she expects people to make fun of her, right? Why would somebody make fun of her for wearing a kimono? Yeah,
Different.
right, it's different. Have you ever seen anyone wearing a kimono? No. And little kids can be kind of mean about things that they don't recognize, right? So the conflict is that because her classmates consider the kimono weird, they start making fun of it, right? The sisters warned her about it. That's what they expect to happen. What about the climax of the story? Yeah.
Suki danced in front of the, I think this was, she danced in front of the class, and after she was done, everybody started clapping for her.
Right. At the climax of the story, The kids are actually starting to begin to laugh at her, they're pointing at her, saying mean things. But Mrs. Paggio calls her to the front to talk about her kimono and what her summer was like. And she takes that opportunity to show them what the kimono is and what it means to her and do that important dance to her. And as a result of that climax, what is the resolution? What happens? Yeah.
Her and her sisters are walking home, and they're like, nobody recognized me for my new shoes, and Suki just smiled on the way home.
Right. So as a result of her actions at the climax, the class recognizes themselves how cool the kimono actually is. They applaud her. They want to learn more about it. And at the end of the day, she's happy, right? Because she got to, what is the theme? Yeah. She got to be herself. So one of the lessons of the story is be yourself. Does anybody know did anyone find another theme in the story? Another lesson that she learned? Yeah. You don't have to care about what other people think about you.
You can be different.
You can be different. All right, these are all great themes. So let's look at the instructions for the assignment, all right? This is going to be due at the end of class, all right? Number 1, summarize Suki's kimono using at least 5 full sentences. Be sure to include important people, places, the main conflict, the climax, the resolution, and a theme from the story, all right? If you run out of room in this area, there's also some space on the back, all right? And number 2, after you finish your summary, you're going to choose a part of the story to illustrate. You want to include details and use at least 4 colors, all right? These need to be a bit more complex than stick figures, all right? Does anybody have any questions about how to do the assignment? All right. There are colored pencils and markers in the back of the classroom. We're not going to use pens or highlighters to color, all right? At the end of the class, you need to turn in the summary worksheet, but you are going to hang on to the handout and keep that in your folder, okay? It's eventually going to get glued into your notebook. Make sure that when you're writing your summary, pay attention to your grammar. I know you just had a lesson on subordinating conjunctions, so I expect those to be especially good, all right? These are some of the names and words that you might not be familiar with how to spell if you want to include them, all right? Yes. in the back of the classroom over there if you don't know where they are. No. At least give them clothing, right? Especially considering how important clothing is in this story.
Okay, who borrowed my stuff? Go put it back. Oh, don't forget Kobe and Michael. Go grab it. It's homework.
Remember, when
Go
you're
grab
doing the
it.
summary, you hang on to the handout.
What if I didn't finish this? Just write that in.
Turn in the one with the illustration. Go get Kobe and Michael if it's not done.
Make sure your name is on it, otherwise they'll have no idea who. Oh.